Thanks for joining us today. If you'd like to know more about all that happens around here at Lifepoint, then you need to download our new app. It's got everything from message notes, upcoming events, reading plans, and even the Sunday set list. We hope this series blesses you, so check this out.
We're continuing a series today called My Perfect Selfie. So get your notes out. And this series is not about encouraging you to take more pictures. The world doesn't need any more narcissism, okay? What it's about is about seeing ourselves the way that God sees us. So my perfect selfie is seeing myself the way that God sees me. Because it's a lot like this. I mean, we've all got phones, and most of you probably have an Instagram account or you're on Facebook. And so when you take a picture, one of the first things you do once you've kind of cropped it down to the picture that you want is you start swiping through and you add filters. And what we've learned is that over our lifetime, filters get applied to who we are. And we begin to see ourselves not as God sees us, but through the filters that have been applied to us. Some of us have put these filters on. Some of us have had other people apply filters to us. And so this series is about living a no-filter life, about getting rid of the filters that cause us to distort the way that we see ourselves. And so today I want to talk about two of the biggest filters that every single one of us will wrestle through applying to our life. And I want to encourage us to get them off of us so that we can see ourselves for who we really are. So I've titled this message, and I encourage you to write this down: The Success of Failure and the Failure of Success. If you're taking notes, you'll find a note card on the seat back in front of you. And if you'll just take that out and just write this down: the success of failure and the failure of success. Now, you can also follow along in the Lifepoint app if you happen to have all the notes there. You'll be a little bit ahead of the game. But success and failure, there's a few things that will impact your view of self more than success and failure. Now, you're in church, so I want everybody to be honest, but participate with me. Raise your hand if you have ever failed at something. Go ahead and raise it. Keep it up for a minute. Just keep it up, because I want people to look around. Just so you know, you're not alone, okay? You're not alone. Now, go ahead and put it down. If any of you are next to somebody that did not raise their hand, you may be sitting next to Jesus. I would encourage you to just say, hey, mind if I get a picture? I've never met someone that's perfect before. Snap it, and you don't have to do that, but I think it'd be funny. We've all failed, right? You are not gonna get through life without dealing with some sort of failure. It's a part of who we are, but it's not our identity. Our failure is not our identity. And so you don't have to live too many years until you find yourself asking this question: how did I get here? You ever been there? You ever had that question? How did I get here? And I don't mean like, how did I get on earth? Okay, I'm not talking about the birds and the bees and all that stuff. How did I get in this predicament? That's what I mean. How did I wind up here? So for instance, this weekend's big graduation weekend, and maybe you're like, man, people are graduating and I'm not. I sure thought I would have graduated by now. How did I get here? A lot of people go to school for 7 years. Why am I, they're doctors, but why haven't I graduated yet? Why haven't I moved out? I'm still living at home with mom and dad. I sure thought I would have been on my own, had my own place by now. Or I sure thought I would have that job, or I would have been made partner in the firm by now, but I haven't. Why am I not where I thought that I would be? I thought I would be married by now. My friends are all coupled up, getting married, and I'm single. And what happens is we begin to look at where we are not, and we see that as a failure. And we begin to wonder, what's wrong with us? Maybe there's something wrong with me. Then there's success. Now, if I were to ask you what is a success, we'd all give different answers. We all see it differently. Some would say success is a destination. It is arriving at a place in life that you have desired to be. So for some, it might be a certain promotion. You've been working hard, putting in the hours, and you get this promotion and you feel like a success. For some, it could be being able to change your relationship status on Facebook. I feel like a success. This is prom season, being asked to prom. Maybe that feels like a success, or making the team. You tried so hard to make varsity, and if you make the team, you feel like a success. For some, it would be that, finally getting the car of our dreams. I mean, we all have dream cars, at least guys do. I don't know if ladies have dream cars, but guys have dream cars. And someday you get the car you've always wanted and you feel like a success. And now everybody else knows you are because you're driving this amazing vehicle. Or perhaps it's getting the perfect house. And we feel like a success. And here's what happens. Whatever your answer would be for success, what is a success? What happens is we inadvertently create a definition of failure. And so we begin to believe that whatever falls short of this thing that I deem to be a success means that I'm not succeeding, therefore I must be failing. But I want to submit to you today that success and failure look entirely different through the lens that God uses. That what we see as a success, God may not see the same way. And what we see as a failure, God may see as a success. That his ways are different than our ways. The prophet Isaiah said it like this in Isaiah 55:8. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. What he's saying is, I see things differently than you. God sees things differently than you and I see things. And so to prove this, I want to take you to two passages in scripture today. We're going to look at a story in the Old Testament and a story in the New Testament. So if you've got your Bibles, go to Judges chapter 6, and then you can go ahead and find Luke chapter 11. So we'll start in Judges 6, we'll make our way to Luke chapter 11. But in Judges chapter 6, here's the scenario, here's what's going on. We find the nation of Israel, they are God's chosen people. I mean, God has said, I'm set you apart, I will protect you, I will provide for you, I love you. All I ask is that you walk in obedience to my commands. And so when Israel would walk in obedience to God's commands, God's protection and provision was on them. But when they ignored God's instructions, they wandered away from God's protection and they found themselves in a mess. And that's exactly where they are in this story. And so they've been crying out to God, wondering why in the world are we in a mess? We're not living in this promised land. We're hiding from the surrounding people. We're hiding in clefts in the rock. We're hiding in caves. Literally every time they would plant crops and they'd get a harvest, the neighboring people would come in and steal their crops, pillage their land, take their livestock. And so they're like, where's God? Where are you at? Why haven't you come? And God responds and says, listen, I've protected you, I've provided for you, but for the last 7 years, you've been acting like you don't even know me. And so this is all on you. You brought this on yourself. Which, just quick side note, we serve a God who loves us enough to let us wander away. And if you're a mom or dad, you know there comes a point when you have to let your kids experience the weight of their own choices, right? You've got to let them experience the consequences, because it's usually those consequences that cause us to make a change. And what God knows is that it is the consequences that will cause his children to turn back to him. So that's where we are in Gideon, or in Judges chapter 6, and we meet this guy named Gideon. Gideon's an interesting character. We first meet him and he is threshing wheat, but he's doing it in a strange place. He's doing it in a wine press. And the reason he's threshing wheat in a wine press is because he is afraid of the people that are around. If they see that he has some harvest, they're gonna wanna come and take it. And so in Judges chapter 6, we see this interaction between Gideon and the Lord. The Bible says, when the angel of the Lord appeared to Gideon, he said, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." Now, kind of funny that God calls him a mighty warrior, because Gideon is anything but a mighty warrior. I mean, he's literally hiding from the people in the surrounding nations. He's terrified, he's a coward, and we're gonna discover that he doesn't think that he's a warrior at all. So he responds, "Pardon me, my Lord, but if the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us? Where are all his wonders that our ancestors told us about when they said, 'Did not the Lord bring us up out of Egypt?' But now the Lord has abandoned us and given us into the hand of Midian." And the Lord turned to him and said, "Go in the strength you have and save Israel out of Midian's hand. Am I not sending you?" So Gideon's crying to God, going, "God, why are we in this mess? Why what happened to all these stories that we heard of the way you provided and the miracles you performed?" And the answer is, I did that because the people were faithful, but you haven't been faithful. And then God says, "Go in the strength that you have." And I just imagine Gideon's like, "I have no strength. So the reason I'm down here in the wine press, threshing wheat, I'm hiding from people." But the conversation continues on. "Pardon me, my Lord," Gideon replied, "but how can I save Israel?" Watch this. "My clan is the weakest in Manasseh." And read this next part with me. And he says, "And I am the least in my family." He says, "Wait a minute, God. You can't send me. I'm a nobody. Like my family, I come from a long line of nobodies. My family is a bunch of nobodies. I'm the runt of the litter. Like, you got the wrong guy." I think it's interesting. Here's Gideon. He's worrying and he's afraid, and yet God calls him a warrior. I'm gonna be like, no, I'm not a warrior, I'm a warrior. There's a difference there. You're calling me a warrior, I'm a warrior. Here's what I want you to know. God always speaks to us through our true identity. Gideon saw himself as somebody that was defeated, somebody that was a failure, somebody that was in hiding, but God saw him for who he created him to be. And so after several tests of Gideon saying, all right, God, I want to make sure this is you. I'm testing you. God passes the test. Gideon then sends his messengers out to start building an army. All right, I got to build an army. An amazing story. 32,000 men show up for duty. That's pretty remarkable, isn't it? 32,000 men. It sounds amazing until you realize the enemies have 120,000 men. So if you're a betting man, the odds right now are 4-1 against Gideon. So let's continue with the story and see how it plays out. Go to Judges chapter 7. We're told that early in the morning, Jerubbaal, that is Gideon, that's a nickname that he's now got. Gideon and all his men camped at the spring of Harod. Now, a really cool side note, getting back from Israel, we got to hang out and spend a little bit of time at the spring of Harod, which is amazing. That's why I tell people, if you've never been to Israel, it did so much to just grow my faith, the trips that I've been on, because suddenly the Bible goes from being words on a page to like places that I've been. So I've been there, I've seen this spring, I can picture it in my mind, I wish I could show all of you. So they're at this place, this spring of Harod, and the camp of Midian was north of them in the valley near the hill of Moreh. Now this is about 4 miles away, so they're pretty close. The Lord said to Gideon, you have too many men. I cannot deliver Midian into their hands, or Israel would boast against me. My own strength has saved me. Now this is ridiculous. I mean, what's the one thing you can't have too much of when you're going into battle? Troops, right? Yeah, soldiers, men, resources. And God's like, hey, you have, Gideon, well done recruiting. You have too many. Because if I let you go fight them and you win, you're going to be like, hey, look at us, look at what we did. And it's not about what you can do, it's about what I'm going to do through you. So here's what he does. Verse 3, announce to the army, anyone who trembles with fear may turn back and leave Mount Gilead. So 22,000 men left while 10,000 remained. I mean, you're like, hey, God, that was a brilliant idea. Way to go, God. Thought you were on my side. Have you ever heard the saying, sometimes it's got to get worse, things got to get worse before they get better? There is something called the J curve of success. The J curve of success, meaning that sometimes, yes, your situation will get worse before it continues to get better. And that's exactly where he's at. This is a mess. 2/3 of his army leaves. Mathematicians, what are the odds now? We were 4-1, now they're like what? 12-1? 12-1, odds are against him. The story's not over though, check this out, verse 4. But the Lord said to Gideon, there are still too many men. Like, come on, thanks God. Help a brother out. There are still too many men. Take them down to the water and I will thin them out for you there. Like, thanks, you've thinned them out enough. If I say this one shall go with you, he shall go. But if I say this one shall not go with you, he shall not go. So Gideon took the men down to the water, and there the Lord told him, separate those who lap the water with their tongues as a dog laps from those who kneel down to drink. 300 of them drank from cupped hands, lapping like dogs, and all the rest got down on their knees to drink. The Lord said to Gideon, with the 300 men that lapped, I will save you and give the Midianites into your hands. Let all the others go home. So Gideon sent the rest of the Israelites home, but kept the 300 who took over the provisions and trumpets of the others. Awesome. We had 10,000 men remaining, 9,700 left. There are 300 of us. The good news is we all have a trumpet now. Yay. We are going to trumpet them to death. This is going to be the first death by trumpeting. What's your strategy? I don't know. We just got a bunch of trumpets. That's what we're going to do. And so it's crazy. The odds now are 400-1. Now, if you're the kind of person who likes to bet on the long shot, I mean, here you go. This is a great scenario for you. None of us, though, would be investing in Gideon or his army. We're not signing up. I mean, we like to look at things that are a success, right? Like everything's up and to the right. But everything for Gideon is down and to the right. It's not looking good. And yet this is the scenario that Gideon finds himself in. Now, if we were to look at Gideon from today's perspective, we would say Gideon is one massive failure. I mean, he went from 32,000 men to 300. What a pathetic leader. I mean, you have to work hard to be able to thin the herd like that. And here's why I say that. Because what we would see as a failure, God actually says is going to be a success. Now, I'm not gonna tell you the rest of the story. You can read it for yourself, but you're gonna discover that God is an incredible strategist. He has a phenomenal tactic, and God uses these 300 men in a powerful way. I would encourage you this week to take some time and just read the rest of the story. But I want you to know that what we see in one light, God says, is actually something else. And so you can't judge things based upon what we perceive. What we perceive to be a failure may actually be a success in the eyes of God. So if we view ourselves through the lens of failure, what's to say that we're not misconstruing who we really are and who God sees us to be? Second story, Luke chapter 12. This is a great passage. Luke 12, the popularity of Jesus is spreading. And literally, Luke 12 opens up by saying people were trampling one another to get close to Jesus. They'd heard of the miracles, they'd heard the stories, and so they're pressing in. And all of a sudden, someone in the crowd shows up and says, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." Culturally speaking, when your dad passed away, he left an inheritance to the kids. The oldest brother got double inheritance, a double portion. So we got literally twice as much as all the other kids. And so this must have been, the father passed away. The younger brother's like, "Hey, this isn't fair. Tell my brother to divide this evenly." And Jesus replies, "Who appointed me a judge or an arbiter between you?" Excuse me. Then he says, "Watch out. Be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions." And then he tells them this parable. A parable is a story. He says, "The ground of a certain rich man yielded an abundant harvest. He thought to himself, 'What shall I do? I have no place to store my crops.' Then he said, 'This is what I'll do. I will tear down my barns and build bigger ones, and there I'll store my surplus grain. And I'll say to myself, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry.'" This guy is living the dream, the American dream. The dream that if you work hard enough and you make enough, then you can kick back and relax and cruise in the rest of the way. This guy's experienced a bumper crop. I mean, this has been a phenomenal harvest, more than he anticipated. The barn is full. He's like, "Man, look at that. I love that. The barn is packed out. I mean, what do I do? I got more than I can even hold, so here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna build bigger barns. We're gonna tear that down, build bigger barns." This guy has got it made. And if we were judging him by the world standards, this is a huge success. I mean, this is literally the definition of success. This guy, if this was today, he'd be posting pictures with his big old barns. He's like, "Man, I like big barns." He's taking pictures of them, hashtag too blessed to be stressed, barn selfie, no filter, I woke up like this. I mean, he's just posting all the hashtags, and he would just be like, "Man, look at that barn." I'd be like, "Man, I got barn envy. Look, that guy's got the best barn ever. So want a barn like that." However, what we see as a success, God is about to tell us is a failure. Check this out. Verse 20, "But God said to him, 'You fool.'" Somebody say fool. Now this isn't fool like sometimes guys were like, "Hey, what's up, fool?" It's not like that. It's not like a term of endearment. This is more like, I pity the fool. It's like Mr. T, whom I just saw on TV the other day. He was on a news channel. I thought, why is Mr. T on the news? I wasn't sure. He had a mohawk still, so that was cool. That has nothing to do with this message. It's just where my mind's at right now. So God says to him, "You fool." It's not cool when God calls you a fool. That rhymed. Then he says, "This very night, your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you've prepared for yourself? This is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich towards God." Everybody would look at this man and say, what a success. And yet God is looking, going, what a failure. This guy built this empire for himself, but he missed out on what mattered most. I want you to know that it is quite possible to become a public success and a private failure. It is quite possible to gain everything the world says you need to be somebody, but miss out on what matters most. I mean, think about it. How many stories do we have to hear of people sacrificing their families on the altar of success? Just you hang in there while I climb the ladder of success, and when I become somebody, I'll bring you along with me. Only thing is, so many people realize they give up their family, they give up their health, they give up things that really matter to achieve a status, only to get there all alone and realize they have nobody to share it with. And it's so easy to succeed at things that don't really matter. I like the quote by D.L. Moody, who said, "Our greatest fear should not be of failure, but of succeeding at something that doesn't really matter." Can I tell you, we live in a world that will applaud you as you pursue things, as you succeed, and people will kind of try to ride on your coattails as you pursue things that don't really matter. What if we were to just say, you know what? I'm done with trying to pursue this filter of success and to present this image and see myself through my accomplishments. Because here's what I want you to know. Write this in your notes. My identity is not tied to my accomplishments. Will you write that down? My identity is not tied to my accomplishments. Neither is yours. And this flies in the face of the way our world's wired. We live in a world, many of us grew up in homes where the more you accomplish, the better grades you got. If you made the team, if you performed good, if you played good in the game, you sort of had parents that lavished praise on you. But if you didn't do real well, then maybe you didn't hear the same kind of accolades. You didn't feel as loved and feel as valued. Some of us grew up in that home where our acceptance was based on our accomplishments. But can I tell you, God doesn't work that way. In God's economy, excess does not equal success. Your net worth does not determine your self-worth. And some of us think that because we have less, we must be worth less. And I want you to know that's not the way God sees things. It's easy for us to look at, how many letters are behind our name or how many zeros are on our paycheck. But God's looking at us because He knows who He created us to be. He knows our perfect identity. And He says, listen, it's not caught up in the things that you've done. It's also not caught up in the failures that you've experienced. Listen, failure is not final. It just means you've tried. Anybody that has experienced any ounce of success has also dealt with failure. The difference is they learn to get back up. They learn to try again. I thought this was interesting. Thomas Edison, his teachers said he was, quote, too stupid to learn anything. Wow. He was fired from his first 2 jobs for being non-productive. As an inventor, Edison made 1,000 unsuccessful attempts at inventing the light bulb. When somebody asked him, how's it feel to have failed 1,000 times making the light bulb? He said, I didn't fail 1,000 times. I discovered 1,000 ways not to make a light bulb. What a great perspective, right? He knew that I'm not gonna get to success without experiencing some failure. Einstein, they say Einstein didn't talk until he was 4 years old. People wondered what was wrong with him. He couldn't read until he was 7. And yet we look at Einstein now and one of the greatest minds ever. Henry Ford failed and went broke 5 times before succeeding. Fred Smith, he's the founder of FedEx. He was told his idea was unfeasible. Come back with a better one. And now we look and FedEx it's all over the place, obviously succeeding. Babe Ruth, known for his home runs, hit 713 home runs. Do you know how many times he struck out? 1,330, almost double. Failed almost twice as much as he succeeded. Walt Disney was told he lacks imagination. Come on. I think about the quote by Michael Jordan who said, I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over and over again in my life, and that's why I succeed. He didn't give up. He didn't allow a failure to become the lens through which he saw himself. And so, I think about it. I think about how God sees things differently. Jesus even speaks about how things are different. Things are different in God's economy. For instance, Jesus said a few things. He said, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant. Think about that. We all want to be great. If you want to be great, people are like, yeah, I want to be great. Who wants to be great? Everybody's raising their hand. If you want to be great, be a servant. What he's saying is if you want to be someone, serve someone. And most of us would be like, yeah, that's not what I wanted. I want to be somebody, but I don't want to have to serve somebody. And Jesus says the way up is the way down. Things are backwards in my economy. That's why I'm so excited about this Say Yes campaign and people stepping up to say, hey, I want to serve. I want to do what Jesus did. I want to serve somebody because I want to be somebody. I want to be a success in God's eyes. He also said this, the first will be last and the last will be first. Does anybody here love to be last? I hate being last. I mean, if I'm in like a line, does anybody do this? If you're in a line at the grocery store, are you like automatically counting like how many people are in front of you and you're counting how many people are in all the other lines and you're calculating which one's gonna get you out faster? That's me all day long. I am counting how many people are in line and I'm counting the items in their cart. And if you have more carts, more items in your cart than the minimum, or the maximum requirement, I just want to throw a flag on the play and get you out of there. And then inevitably, whatever line I get in is gonna be in the slowest one. So if you see me at the store, don't get in my line if you're in a hurry, okay? I can't stand being slow, being last. And then, you ever been in one of those long lines like at the airport and suddenly they open another lane, but it's like right in front of you and they're like, you, sir, come on down here. And you were like, God is so good. The last shall be first, the first shall be last, hashtag blessed. I mean, I don't like being last, but God says, hey, in my economy, the last are first and the first are last. Things are backwards. If you see yourself as first, you just might be last. But if you're last, you might be first. Jesus also said, what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world but forfeits his soul? Again, the idea of becoming a public success and a private failure. I have everything the world says I should have to be happy and be someone. But God's going, no, you're missing the most important thing. So success, we need to redefine it. It's not our accomplishments and our job titles and our paychecks. And there's nothing wrong with having a good job and a great paycheck. I think as Christians, we ought to strive to be the best that we can. We just got to stop finding our identity wrapped up in it or wrapped up in our failures and our letdowns and the things that we've wrestled through. Here's a better definition. If you write this down, faithfulness determines success. Faithfulness determines success. Accomplishment does not determine success. Promotion does not determine success. Faithfulness. Faithfulness, saying, God, you created me. I want to be faithful to who you created me to be. Because think about it. Someday we hope to stand before the Lord and hear, well done, good and what? Faithful servant. And I'm afraid a lot of folks won't hear that because they have neither been faithful nor a servant. And if we want to live a life that honors God, true to who he created us to be, we're going to be faithful to God. We're gonna serve other people. I mean, think about it. What would happen if we stopped trying to be successful and just started being faithful? Trusting God for the results, trusting God to provide, trusting God to promote me, trusting God to put me where he wants to put me in his time. Can I tell you, I had no idea what God was gonna do 11 years ago when we started Lifepoint Church. I never could have written this script. And so many times I find myself going, how did we get here? In a good way, how do we get here? And it was just one yes after another saying, God, I wanna be faithful. Now, I haven't gotten it right all the time. I've certainly missed the mark plenty. But I just look at how God has provided. So faithful with God, faithful in our marriage. You know, we take vows and we say for better or worse, rich or poor, sickness and health, till death do us part. And if you've been married long enough, you gotta get through the poorer to get to the richer, don't you? You gotta get through the worse to get to the better. You gotta get through the sickness to get to the health. And if you are unwilling to stay faithful through the tough seasons, you're not gonna experience the joy and the blessing of the good seasons. Faithfulness, I think, find a couple that's been married for 40, 50, 60 years. That's a picture of success. Those are the ones that we should be learning from. Find that person that stayed the course. You know, faithful as a mom or a dad. Listen, parenting's not easy and it is not for the faint of heart. Maybe the hardest thing that I've ever done. My wife and I are raising 3 incredible kids. They will test your Jesus at times. And it's easy to be like, you know what? I did not sign up for this. And a lot of people, especially dads, we have a fatherless society. A lot of dads just say, you know what? Check, please, I'm out. Rather than fighting through the difficult seasons. Staying faithful even when it's not fun. Faithfulness determines success. Faithful in business. If you have the privilege of running a business, be faithful as a boss, faithful towards your employees. Show them what integrity looks like. Honor God with that business and watch God promote you. Faithful in our dealings with other people. I believe that when we do that, the world will look and say, there's a person that I want to be like. There's a success. That's somebody that I want to be able to emulate those qualities in my life. Because I think it's time that we give the world a better picture. Things aren't as they seem, and oftentimes what we deem as a success in the eyes of the world is a failure in the eyes of God. You know, as I was prepping on this series, I came across a young girl and her story. Her name is Asina O'Neill. I doubt that name rings, out to anybody, maybe some of the younger crowd. She's a 19-year-old girl from Australia, kind of made a lot of news just in the last year and a half or so. She had over 500,000 Instagram followers, 250,000 YouTube subscribers. She literally was getting paid to post pictures on social media. Now, I know some of you were like, how do I get that job? That'd be great. She had it made. I mean, through the eyes of her fans, she was a celebrity. She was paid to take pictures. She was sent wardrobes and outfits, just hopes that she would post pictures because she had that much influence. And at a point, she finally became exhausted, and she began to be honest about the reality behind the pictures. Things weren't as they seemed. What you saw as a success, that she felt like she was a failure. She felt like she had to work so hard to present this image that wasn't true. Her account has since been removed, but before she removed it, she updated the captions on many of the pictures to explain what was really going on behind the picture. She talked about how she was dealing with anxiety and depression, how she would literally starve herself to present what appeared to be this perfect figure for the photos, of how she would take numerous pictures, how she would go hungry, how sad she was, how emotionally drained she was, just to present this image. Here's one of the pictures that she posted. And she wrote this. This is her edited caption. She says this. She says, "Please like this photo. I put on makeup, curled my hair, tight dress, big uncomfortable jewelry, took over 50 shots until I got one I thought you might like. Then I edited this one selfie for ages on several apps just so I could feel some social approval from you. Then all caps, there is nothing real about this." I just wonder how many of us are viewing life through the lens of success and failure, to where we are trying to present an image of ourselves that is not real, that is trying to maybe play for the approval of others, hoping people will see us as something that we are not. And I applaud her for saying, you know what, I'm done with this. I'm taking this whole thing down. I'm tired of presenting this fake image, projecting this image. I want to be true to who I am, and this isn't me. And I just wonder, I know that you're not doing it through, you're not taking 50 selfies to make yourself look great. I get that. But a lot of us, we're thinking, if I can just get that thing or that job or that role, then in the eyes of others, I'll be a success. And you may become a public success, but in the eyes of God, you may miss the mark big time. And I want to encourage you today, let's be more concerned about an audience of one than the many that are around us. Let's live for the one that created us. Let's be faithful to the relationship and the God that formed us. Let's not live a life seeking approval. Let's live a life knowing that we are already approved and loved by God. Let's reject this image of success and this image of failure, and let's be true to who God created us to be. My prayer for every single one of us this week is that we would see ourselves the way that God sees us. You know, I'll never forget, when we were starting this church, I had a pastor speak some wisdom into me, and he said, Jeff, never forget this. You're never as good as your best days, and you're never as bad as your worst days. He told me that over 11 years ago. Can I tell you, I am so thankful for that wisdom. I'm so thankful that I am not defining myself, I'm not finding my identity on the mountaintop of success or the valley of failure, but I'm allowing God to remind me who I am, that I am His, that I am loved, that I am accepted, that I am one of a kind, that He made me, that there is no flaw in me. And He says the same exact thing about you. And what I'd love to do is be able to pray that over every single person today. Would you join me as we pray? Father, I pray that we would get a glimpse of who we are through your lens. God, that you would help us to remove the filters that have skewed the image. God, that we would stop seeking our identity in others. Lord, that we wouldn't beat ourselves up over the failures of the past, failed relationships, addictions. God, that we would see ourselves exactly as you created us. Now, church, with your heads bowed and your eyes closed, I believe there's some here, and this idea of being created by God just seems like a foreign one. It seems like it's a far-fetched idea that God could love you. Because some of us, we don't feel like we've done anything deserving of God's love. But I want you to know that He loves you just as you are. And that if today, the Bible says that if we would declare with our mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in our heart that God raised Him from the dead, that we will be saved. You and I, we can experience the grace of God, the forgiveness of God. We can have a relationship with God. We don't have to work for it. It's already been done. Jesus did the heavy lifting. You and I have to just simply receive the gift of grace and forgiveness. And today, if you've never done that, would this be your moment when you say yes to Jesus? with heads bowed and eyes closed all over the room, if today you need to begin a relationship with God, would you make this your prayer? From the quietness of your heart. You don't have to say this out loud, but from your heart, would you say, "Dear God, thank you for loving me. I put my faith and trust in Jesus. I believe that what he did on the cross, he did for me. And I receive that today. I give you my life. I give you my identity. I am who you say I am. Fill me with your Holy Spirit. Give me the strength to trust you and to follow you." Say this, say, "Thank you for saving me." Tell him that, "Thank you for saving me."